In a world of infinite choices, service is the only differentiator. It's particularly special in wine. Our selection in wine is absurd. How do you retain that customer? How do you make a relationship with them? Well, part of it is, how do you talk to them? How do you service them? How do you make them feel better? How do you make them feel an experience?
Right. And not just at the winery, but when they go back home, that you're still having that connection with them. I used to be in the tech industry, and there were the sort of dreamers who would say, no, our technology is better. And so I see it in the wine industry. No, our wine is better. It's like, you know what? You got to make good wine. But there's got to be something more. As you said, I think there's 150,000 new wines in the US alone every year.
Yeah.
Worldwide, that's exponentially larger.
Yeah,
and so
crazy.
How are they going to remember you? Through experience. Maya Angelou, the American poet and writer, said, they will remember how you made them feel. And if you can connect with that, which comes through personal service experience, that's what they'll remember.
Do you have a thirst to learn about wine? Do you love stories about wonderfully obsessive people, hauntingly beautiful places, and amusingly awkward social situations? Well, that's the blend here on the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. I'm your host, Natalie McLean, and each week I share with you unfiltered conversations with celebrities in the wine world, as well as confessions from my own tipsy journey as I write my third book on this subject. I'm so glad you're here. Now pass me that bottle, please, and let's get started.
Welcome to episode 65. Today you're going to hear from Paul Mabray, a wine unicorn and digital futurist who has some deeply insightful observations and predictions about the wine industry and how social media and other online technology is changing the way we learn about and buy wine as consumers. This conversation first aired on my regular Facebook Live video show a couple of years ago, but Paul is so forward-thinking, I wanted to share this conversation with you. We will definitely have him back for an update very soon. During our chat, I occasionally respond to comments that the viewers make during the show. You can join that conversation every second Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'll put a link as to where you can find us in the show notes, as well as links to Paul's website, social media handles, and the video version of this conversation at nataliemclain.com/65. Now, speaking of your wine future, why not make it a tastier one? Sign up for my free online wine video class, The 5 Wine and Food Pairing Mistakes That Can Ruin Your Dinner and How to Fix Them Forever. Go to nataliemclain.com/class and choose a time and date that work for you. I look forward to seeing you inside the class. Okay, on with the show. What impact does social media have on wine, both wineries and the wine industry? That's the question we're going to explore. Our guest is described as both a wine unicorn, I love that, and a digital futurist. He has created and led companies that have transformed the wine industry through the strategic and visionary use of technology. He believes that the future of the wine industry hinges on its ability to adapt and change consumer expectations wherever they are, online, in the winery tasting room, at the liquor store, in the restaurant, or at home. And he joins me from his office in Napa Valley, California. Welcome, Paul Mabray.
Wow, thanks for having me back. That was the best introduction ever. I'm not lying. That was amazing. You got it to a point exactly how I think. So,
well, Paul, you are so impressive. It's easy to give a great introduction to someone who has so much material to work with. Seriously. So that's very high level. I could have said a lot more. Fill in the gaps for us, Paul. Tell us a bit more about yourself, your personal life, whatever you'd like to fill in. What I missed.
Sure. So let's see. I've been in the wine industry 24 years. Can you believe it?
No, I can't. Not with that baby face.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a picture of Dorian Gray in the back, so I just keep it. But yes, I've been here 24 years, and I've had a really, really lucky run at it. So, but everything that's been in my career that's done well is using technology to move the forward, just kind of leaning into it.
Yep.
Like you said, I am a bit of a unicorn because I'm the only tech CEO that's been around so long. I'm just so stubborn. So
Stubborn.
I think stubborn is, and I've always been kind of trying to bring together Silicon Valley and wine valleys, Napa Valley, Sonoma Valley. As you know, I started Wine Direct, which was the first e-commerce SaaS company. And then recently Vintank, which sold twice over, which was the social media. And who knows what's going to be next? Maybe Internet of Things. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that's hot. Oh, there's so much I want to ask you.
Yeah.
We talked about 3, 4, it might have been more years ago. That was the most shared post for our site ever. It was hundreds of shares, which represents, thousands of people. What is the big changes, especially if we focus into the last year, 2, 3?
Yeah, it's been a while actually since we've chatted, but I think the wine industry is starting to wake up to digital actually in some ways. I mean, you see Constellation spent, I think, $56 million on digital marketing.
Oh, on
digital
marketing. Okay.
Yeah, digital marketing. And that's up from $4 million about 4 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So if you think about that, that's a huge exponential growth. And they're going to continue to add to that. E-commerce is the fastest growing thing in the United States.
Yes.
So more and more wineries are having to sell via e-commerce or choosing to sell via e-commerce, which I wish they would have started in 2002. But I'm happy that they're finally catching up, 15 years later.
It's encouraging. Yeah.
It is. And we have Amazon now that bought Whole Foods. So I think that's going to catalyze a lot.
Is that going to be a disruptor the way Uber disrupted the taxi industry, the way Airbnb disrupted the hotel industry? Is Amazon, especially now with Whole Foods, going to disrupt the wine industry?
Well, I think that they have the best chance of it, one of the best chances. The wine industry is probably close to, if not the last industry that still hasn't been changed by the internet. And I said that 4 years ago. Right?
Yeah, I know. I re-listened to it. It's like...
Yeah, it's still the same thing. It's crazy. So we don't have an Expedia.com. We don't have an Uber. We haven't had any of those disruptors so much.
What about Wine.com? That's been around forever. Why didn't that disrupt anything?
It's interesting. I worked for Wine.com. It's funny, So I worked for the original one, Wine Shop or Wine.com. I think that there's so many factors that play against that, but a lot of regulatory stuff more than anything else. And it's still just kind of hindered by this burden.
Yeah.
I think that as you look at Amazon's acquisition of Whole Foods, as soon as that hits the docket, and if that wins, Amazon will be a dominant force, especially with the pick-pack locations, all the Whole Food pick-pack locations. They can buy in California direct from wineries or in Washington or Oregon. So their ability to get the lowest cost and ship all the way across the United States is going to be unprecedented.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we've got 13 stores. I don't know if it's on Ontario or across the country here in Canada. Of course, we're facing those same cross-border prohibition hangover laws.
Yeah.
It's been legalized on a federal level, and then you've still got provincial regulations tangling things up. I would be interested to see if this really disrupts the business of, say, the LCBO, which is our monopoly in Ontario.
Yep. No, I know it very well.
Here's hoping. Yeah, everybody knows the LCBO. How do you convince wineries, Paul, that this is something they should be doing?
Yeah, that's been a mantra I've been singing for since 2009, right? At this point, that's a long time. I feel like I'm still saying the same thing over and over again. In fact, my presentations, they say the same thing. They just have really different, cool Star Wars slides, as you know. So, I say, if a phone rings in your tasting room, would you answer it? If an email comes from a customer, would you answer it? These new phones are called Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Delectable. We took, just to kind of walk you through, we took 80 million people that talked about wine online.
Wow.
So quite a sum. And then we took 5 million people that bought wine vis-a-vis consumer direct from wineries, mostly United States, mostly California centric. And then we put them together and we found the Venn between the two, the kind of the commonalities, and we did some factors and we narrowed it down to about 250,000 people. And then we sample set about 12,500 of those people. And what we were trying to do is trying to understand, what is that crazy kind of person who buys wine directly from a winery when you have all these choices, right? When you have wine.coms, why would someone go directly to wine? What is the psychology behind it? We really want to understand that piece first. And I know that 12,500 sounds like a very small number, but we actually analyzed everything they did. So we analyzed, they had 5.3 million followers. They had 183,000 conversations about wine online, 2.3 million total posts of everything they'd ever done. Just at 12,500 people, right? They had 53,000 online purchases, those 12,500, and they spent something like $17 million between that. It was a really heavy hitting crew. And that's where that 5 Tribes report comes from.
Okay.
It tells you kind of the psychology of who these people were, where they were. Now, it obviously had a little bit of selection bias, meaning they were already digitally savvy. They'd skew a little younger. They skew more affluent, right? But the thing that came out of it most is that in looking to find out who these people were, we also stumbled upon some causation. And the causation was, how much is social media worth? So we used to think that people that talked about wine online a lot, that's going to be the people that buy GCC a lot. Not necessarily true, but what we did find
What's
out.
GCC, sorry?
DTC, I'm sorry, direct to consumer. Sorry,
Oh, okay.
direct to consumer. I'm sorry.
You're truly a techie when you start rolling out the acronyms.
I apologize. That was bad news.
No, NBD,
yeah.
no big deal. Keep going.
Big deal. So what we found out in analyzing it is the people that talked about wine the most were not the people that bought directly from wineries a lot, actually. They were people that bought in a local supermarket, people that bought from online retailers. They actually bought a lot of wine, but not a lot directly from wineries. But what we did find out is that people that bought wine directly from wineries and engaged on social media were worth a lot more. So if they had a single solitary engagement on a social media platform, like a like or a comment or a star or a heart or any of those things, they were worth 10% more over their lifetime value.
In terms of how much they buy wine or repeat purchases or
from that
whatever.
winery.
Okay.
Yeah. From that 10% more from that winery. 2 times it was 29%.
Yeah.
3 times it was 38%. So these are some big numbers, right? They're adding up. And it sounds kind of hyperbolic, but when you think about it, it's a noisy world.
Yeah.
You're engaging with the people, you're getting their attention where they're at.
Yeah.
I guess the point that I'm trying to say is there is actually, for the first time ever, causation between social media and direct-to-consumer purchasing from wineries or buying wine directly from wineries.
And
that's pretty amazing.
That is amazing. That is. I don't want to lose that point. That's fantastic. And now those likes or those interactions, was that when they were directly with the winery? Or, a lot of wineries, or not a lot, but some wineries are paying lifestyle influencers, especially when it comes to Instagram. And they'll count, 50, 100 likes or whatever, because I'm sharing this wine with my friends.
Sure.
Are all likes alike?
No, not all likes are alike. Influencers have their place. I think we're kind of savvy to it. The consumer is savvy to it. We do like to buy things that other people like. The rosé movement in the United States can be directly correlated to Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie's wine coming into the market.
Right.
If you look at the analysis on social media. But I actually believe that where people really drive it is super fans, right? And I think wineries are so everyone wants that instant fix.
Right.
Like having you mention a wine, you're an influencer, right? It's a big deal. And people care about it and think about it. There's also micro influencers. Maybe I do a wine and my 10,000 fans like that. But what's even better is if someone is really passionate about sharing it all the time, making sure to tell their friends about it, like viral. And super fans are the amplifiers for brands, and they don't even know who they are usually, sadly enough.
Huh. You mean the wineries don't know who they are?
The wineries, I'm a super fan for Lopez de Heredia. I love that wine. I love it. It's funky, it's strange, it's kooky. I'm a super fan for my wife's winery, obviously.
Which is what? I'm curious.
My wife works for Cornerstone, the bottle we're going to give away. So.
Right, and premium winery, yes.
Yeah, and I'm enjoying the 2016 Sauvignon Blanc. If you haven't had it, it's really good. And she just had Charles Thomas join, who made Illumination as the winemaker with Carrie. So he's the consulting winemaker, and he built Illumination. He's talking about the 2017 to be the best Sauvignon Blanc he's ever made. So I'm excited.
Back to your super fans for a moment. One recent thing that I came across was J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter. Mm-hmm. She did not give any review copies to the critics, the book critics. She invited, I don't know how many, super fans, everyday book readers and lovers of her book. And that's who she let read the galleys or the first copies. And she gathered them together and then they dispersed. So super fans are a great idea. What does that mean for the role of the so-called professional critic now, wine critic?
Well, you and I know that sadly the professional wine critic has been under siege since the beginning of digital, actually. What was the old saying in advertising? When you advertise, half of it's working, half of it's not, but I don't know which half, I think is the good metaphor, right?
Exactly.
I think so the first thing they cut is all those wonderful lifestyle parts of a magazine and newspapers. And we've seen the continued decline in paying for wine. Then you had the blog that came out. So it became a bull market for free content. So you're always competing against free. If you look at things like Yelp, I've seen Yelps that have like a McDonald's has 10,000 stars, 5 stars. I'm like, that's
and then
gross.
I never want to trust Yelp again.
OpenTable's a lot better than that, and Foursquare. But I mean, this crowd is the new critic. It's the reality. But how does that weight itself out? And I think that combination of pro and consumer,
right,
or top and bottom also have a play, right?
Top and bottom,
people that consume their like Amazon, right? If you've ever done Amazon reviews, you go to buy your Amazon.
The worst review.
I look at the worst review or a couple of them, and I look at a couple of the top reviews and try to create my own educated guess at the dissonance between the two, right? Yeah. So, if everyone's bragging about it, why are they bragging about it so much? And if someone's really upset about it, what are those things I need to be aware of before I go into that purchase, whatever it is?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're kind of coming back to some better paying, but as it relates to influencers and super fans, I think they're two different things. Like an influencer like you, there's only 20 of you, I think, in the world now. 20 people have an influence over 100,000 people. That's a pretty elite group. I mean, if you think about it, Allie. Okay,
and so we're down to 20. I think the last time we chatted, you said there were 25.
Yeah, it's getting less.
They're dropping like flies.
Yeah, sadly enough, right?
But these super fans, do they not have a following of 100,000 people, or they tend not to? They just tend to be really advocates of a brand, and they're
micro influencers. They have their own following. They're like me, right? I would be a super fan. So I'm the guy that everyone knows likes wine. I'm the guy that gets a call in the supermarket, once a month or twice a month, saying, "Hey, I'm looking at a row of wine. What should I pick?" And I brag about certain wines more than that. Like I said, I will always talk about Lopez. I'll always talk about Cornerstone. I love Matthias. And there's a lot of wines that I'm big fans of. Dirty and Rowdy. If you haven't talked to Hardy Wallace, he's amazing. You should meet him, by the way.
I've heard of him. Yeah.
You would love him.
Okay. Why?
He is like the sweetest man I've ever met. His laugh is infectious.
Is he a winemaker?
He is a winemaker. He was a blogger. He won that, a really good job from Kendall Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
He was
a live stage or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was there for 6 months and then started his own wine brand. And it's called Dirty and Rowdy. And he's just funny and clever and just an all-around good human being. So, and like you are. So it's like this great, you guys should definitely meet.
Oh, that sounds like fun. Okay. Yeah. So we've got our super fans, but let's go back again, because there's stuff I want to make sure I cover with you. Trying to justify the ROI of social media, the ROI of caring, the ROI of, service and individual attention and engagement. But how does that scale? How do you convince a mid-tier winery or a mid-level marketing manager who has a sales force or a senior management going, no, I just want, did you get 1,000 likes? Did you get 10,000 impressions? I mean, how do you talk about that with them?
Look, I love the concept of scale, but there's nothing better than scaling a human experience and people sharing it over and over again. And I have a saying that all customers are important, but not all customers have the same importance. So
what do you mean by that?
Some customers are worth more than others, the Pareto principle. Sometimes surprising customer that's not worth a lot is actually more valuable than just going to the same customer over and over again. So randomly choosing a customer that's not worth something and showing up at their door with a case of wine. Imagine how that would make somebody feel, or obviously paying better attention to the better customers. And how do you get them to work their way up the ladder to be that at the top and then keep maintaining them as long as you possibly can? I'm sure you know about this right now, that we're in this thing called the age of the consumer. Mm-hmm. And we're also in what's called the subscription economy, right? Everything is getting through subscriptions, micro subscriptions everywhere, whether it's iTunes or the new kind of plated and Blue Apron.
Yes.
Or Stitch Fix, the clothes that come in the mail.
Yeah. Product as a service. Like they're making everything over into a service. You're right. They send you clothes. You can send them back. No hassles.
Right.
So, yeah.
Or meals that you're getting that they've prepared then. There's the Hot Sauce Club, and then there's a predictable income stream. The irony about this is wineries were one of the first ones to invent that model. It was newspapers. It was the Columbia Record House, whatever that you put your stamps on the records that you get in the mail, right? And then wineries. The difference is wineries never matured. So what's happening in the subscription economy is in order to maintain a customer, you have always got to create value. You always have to be making things easier. That's why being so customer-centric and creating something where you maintain these customers and hold on to them and you're doing something for them over and over again is foundational, I think.
Yeah. I'm sold for several reasons. One customer story, and you've said this and I've seen it, one customer story can go everywhere with social media. So it's not just that you did this special thing for one person. If they share it or gets around, that is scaling, so to speak, and amplifying.
Yeah.
Also, we always know that the cost of winning over a customer is far costlier than getting a repeat, deeper engage. Yeah. Get that, the person who's already buying from you, go deeper, deeper, deeper. Make sure they're with you, make sure they're purchasing more often, deepen the relationship. But still, I find there's still the sort of marketing managers and so on. They're so tied up in, well, how fast is your traffic growing or whatever, or, how many more impressions? Still, how do you talk to them and say, no, it's about deeper engagement? They'll go, I can't put that in a chart.
That's an interesting question. I think the trends are showing that already. I think that creating better customer service, if you look at Zappos, it sold for $1.3 billion to Amazon because it did customer service better.
Is that the shoe company?
That is the shoe company.
Okay.
And if you go, you should still go there on their page, the About Us, and they say they are a service company that just happens to sell shoes. The homogenous nature of the internet is it either becomes commoditized or you add service. And in a world of infinite choices, service is the only differentiator. I really believe that. I say that over and over again. Yeah. It's particularly special in wine. I mean, look, our selection in wine is absurd.
It's mind-boggling. Yeah.
And how do you retain that customer? How do you make a relationship with them? Well, part of it is how do you talk to them? How do you service them? How do you make them feel better? How do you make them feel an experience? How do you remind them of things?
Right. And not just at the winery, but when they go back home, that you're still having that connection with them. Because, I think it's a lost cause. I used to be in the tech industry, and there were the sort of dreamers who would say, no, our technology is better. And so I see it in the wine industry. No, our wine is better. It's like, you know what? Okay, you got to make good wine. They got to like it. But there's got to be something more. As you said, I think there's 150,000 new wines in the U.S. alone every year.
Yeah.
Worldwide, that's exponentially larger.
Yeah,
and so
crazy.
How are they going to remember you? Through experience. Maya Angelou, the American poet and writer, said, they won't remember what you told them. They won't remember something else, but they will remember how you made them feel.
That's absolutely right.
And if you can connect with that, the feeling, which comes through personal service experience, that's what they'll remember.
Yeah, I recommend anyone, whatever industry you're in, to follow Brian Solis. Do you know him?
No.
He's a famous writer, wrote The Consumer Experience. Another one to do is Olivier Blanchard. And both of these guys are like on the cutting edge of user experience and how you lead, no matter if you're a product, a technology, a service company, how do you lead with this experience? How do you roll into every part of your brand? He's got free speeches on YouTube, both of them. They have great books. I think X is the experience. Brian Solis is a great guy too, and so is Olivier. So also Danny Meyer, by the way.
Oh, isn't he fabulous? He's awesome. On the ball. I was reading one of the articles you wrote on Medium about him. That article was fantastic, and that was true engagement, because that's another point, Paul. We get a lot of. It's not specific to the wine industry, but what I call the retweeting of humble brags. So someone posts a review and it's like, glad you, whatever, liked it, as opposed to true engagement that would say, I don't know, take the conversation further or something. What do you think? Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. I've made fun of Schramsberg in the past. You've seen me perform with speeches. I don't want to embarrass him any more than I have. Yeah, exactly. But the humble brags all over the place where you're just retweeting. That's not engagement. That doesn't help.
It's broadcasting and it's nauseating and it's
broadcasting.
We get
Danny Meyer's amazing that way. He chooses people. He tells them an experience. And, I used to have a bad experiment. This is why I try to show the positive. I drive up and down Highway 29 or 101 through Sonoma, and I would tweet a winery saying, if you answer me in the next 30 minutes, I'll stop by and buy a bottle of wine. I've only bought 2 bottles of wine out of hundreds of tweets. So just to be clear, I feel bad.
It's a good point, though. It's a really good point.
It was a bit of a wall of shame, so I kind of stopped doing it. But I mean, the reality is that says something. I'm telling you, I'm coming and I will buy a bottle of wine if you just say hello to me.
The phone is ringing. The digital phone is ringing, and we're
not answering.
Busy. Yeah. Wineries still are afraid to reach out to club members beyond the club shipments as they're afraid of cancellations, email marketing more so.
That's funny that, I think that's just bad business practice. If they're not reaching out to their members because they don't want them to cancel.
Yes.
That's
depending on inertia. I mean, I've totally switched my focus this year to, I just want devoted, crazy, my tribe. And
your tribe.
Yeah. I mean, there's, several 100,000 people subscribe or members who've signed up, but the ones I email most with. It's like, I just want people who want to hear from me frequently. And if you don't, go away. I'm not for you.
I think that I agree with you. It's the tribe. It's about the people that you care about. Sadly enough, it's been a little bit more polarizing this year with politics and everything else. But social really allows us to break that Dunbar rule, in my opinion. It really allows us to...
Dunbar rule?
The Dunbar rule says that we can only have 150 meaningful relationships.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's 150. I should double check it, but it's pretty small.
Sounds good. Yeah. That's true. And that's what you need. Go deeper with those people.
Agreed. But social media also allows you to maintain that Dunbar rule. Look, we haven't talked in a few years, but we talked online quite a few times in between. I've always said this, that social media is the thin connections between the thick ones we make. We're having a thick one right now. We're enjoying some wine together. We had a thick one at Farmstead a few years ago, had lunch together. But in between these thin ones, and if you put a lot of thin ones together, by the way, you get a thick relationship as well. So there are people that I've talked to only online, and it's the first time I meet them in real life, it's like we're long lost friends.
You feel you know them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we do know each other. We've been talking for a long time. Right?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Laura Milne says, facing this challenge at the winery I work for right now, and I'm trying to bring us into social media world. So much pushback because it's so hard to quantify the results.
I'll send the report. You can quantify. You can show it to them. If they can't get that, then because they want 10% more for lifetime value, they want 20% more. So use that report we sent you. Please.
Okay, I'm gonna. Can't wait to read it.
She should definitely use that. That'll help her convince her bosses. Considering that most of the human population is on social media, at least in the first world countries, I mean, that's like saying, hey, all of our customers are here, but we're not going to talk to them. We're going to go to this cave and see what happens.
This was in one of your presentations in New Zealand, and I was like, how many of you are online? How many of you are on social media? How many of you have a smartphone? It was like 100%, I think.
100%. It was 100%.
And yet, wineries and sales forces and so on want that traditional, no. It's the stuff that's on TV and print and so on. That's what counts when it comes to coverage, reviews, or advertising. We're all living digitally, and I don't know.
We're really resistant against it. And it's a very multifaceted problem, honestly, in the wine industry. It's culturally challenging. I don't really understand it yet. Why it's totally there. It's been my Rubik's Cube for a couple of decades now. So I'm almost there. I got 3 or 4 of the sides figured out, but we'll see if we can get the last 2. Yeah.
Well, that report, I'm sure, will shed some light as well. Stephen Andrews has joined us, and he's drinking a wacky wine.
I love wacky wines.
Exactly. Yeah, and I pick wines because of labels. Uber.
What is your wackiest variety that you like? I mean,
that I like
that you really enjoy.
Oh, I'm going to sound so safe if I pick something like, what I've started loving is the wines of Santorini.
Okay.
So I'll try not to be too trendy because I think volcanic wines are having their moment. So I like to be off trend and unfashionable if I can. So I do like them. I don't know. There's something alive and energetic there. Orange wines, okay.
They're hit and miss. They're hit and miss for me. Sometimes they're amazing, and sometimes you're like, that's just a flawed wine.
Yeah, it's just weird or funky or something. I still like the crisp whites, Gruner, Veltliner, and all that kind of stuff. I don't know.
How about Pickpool?
Okay, tell us about that.
No. You know it very well. It's just a nice, sharp wine that's dry and beautiful. I love that wine. Not a lot of people have it, so finding one's pretty rare. Yeah, at least U.S. based. Have you drank any, or do you enjoy any?
I've only had a few. I get to taste everything the LCBO brings in. So
yes, of course.
I taste a lot of wines. So yes, I've tried more than one.
They're kind of like a mix between a Pinot Grigio and a Sauvignon Blanc. And that would be the way I describe it. From using it as a reference point, maybe. I love white Riojas, by the way. I don't know why.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, they're kind of kooky.
Unicorn wine there.
Exactly.
On trend.
Exactly.
All right. So do you think, Paul, that content generation or content is the new advertising, or do you think there's some mistaken notions about content, that TLDR, too long didn't read? Where is the balance of how much content both wineries and wine review sites should be pushing out versus engagement?
Yeah, so we live in the age of content pollution. I believe in good quality content. you're telling your story. If you're telling it well, you're telling it frequently and consistently across channels. That's just part of what you're supposed to do.
Sure.
I think every brand is a media company. Their job is to create the content and put it out and tell their story.
Mm-hmm.
I do think, though, that if I were running any wine brand, I would only do 10 to 15% content creation and 85, 90% engagement.
Responding to people on social media or wherever.
Not just responding, proactively reaching out to them, finding people I want to talk to, tribes that I want to engage with, whether I'm doing that through small micro advertising so they can encourage them to talk and start the conversation, or through actual one-on-one. Regardless, I'd really be spending my time trying to get my message to these people, letting them know that I'm here, I'm a real brand. I really care about what they think, just to your point, right?
Yeah.
Have those really dedicated people, because they're going to tell two more people, and they're going to tell two more. It's just going to be a great, wonderful, cascading gift.
Absolutely. And you brought that up with Danny Meyer on Medium, that people would be just saying, I'm having a birthday in New York City. And what was the example you used?
That's exactly, that was exactly it. They're saying they're coming to New York City, and he's all, well, these 3 restaurants are open that night. Or, we have a great appetizer, we're doing special Bloody Marys this morning, or trying to contextually fit that in to start new conversations with potential customers. I mean, Danny Meyer is the king of that. And his book, Setting the Table, is really kind of a great foundational book for anyone doing any business, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I've read that as well. I absolutely loved it. And, we have a restaurateur here in Ottawa, Steve Becta, who worked with Danny Meyer, and he's got the Danny Meyer ethic in him and has raised the bar here in Ottawa for dining. He's got 3 restaurants now. He's so successful. But that training that came from, he was front of the house sommelier at 11 Madison.
Okay.
And a few other places with Danny Meyer while he was in New York for 5 years. Anyway, it's a great, great example. He talks about, just one divergent note here, but someone had a business meeting and they had a leather briefcase, but with the long strap, and it was broken. And so they checked the bag. And then by the time they'd finished lunch or dinner, they had got that bag repaired, the strap repaired, stuff like that. It just
lasts.
Hero stories that do actually get shared, I think.
And even if they don't get shared, I mean, you really make a difference in someone's life. There's no better service than that, to make someone feel better and smile with a good customer service call. Or, none of us are doing brain surgery or genetic testing that's going to cure cancer. So what can we do in the human condition while we're out there busy being capitalists? We can make people feel better.
Absolutely.
I think that's something that's lost. And I think the internet lost it a bit. And I think that we're going to bring it back. Look, in a world of infinite choices, it doesn't matter if it's wine, how we do service is really going to make the difference for all of us. How our business is the same. Yeah. And people invest so little in that service quality.
Yes, that's true. And 2 weeks ago, I was chatting right here with Dr. Laura Catena from Argentina. And I said, why did you not switch? But she's both an emergency room doctor in San Francisco, and she makes wine with her family winery in Argentina. And she said she realized she could make people happy with wine. And she thought it was as important as being an emergency room doctor. So you just said, we're not doctors, but she relieved a lot of bourgeois stress for me personally, that I'm not a doctor. But she really framed it nicely, that actually it's about making an impact in the world. This is where we've planted ourselves, and we can do this. Like, we can actually make a difference in people's lives with what you're talking about.
Yeah, and we can do it through wine as a general category, or we can do it through the simplest piece of how we run our business, or how we help our businesses do a better job making people feel better. Or,
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a disconnect between consumers and brands. What digital tools can brands use to build brand awareness, engage consumers while at location, and engage post-visit?
I think that it's the philosophy versus a singular tool. Obviously, there's a lot of good tools out there. You have to have that digital mindset. You have to be part of that digital. Your companies have to be thinking digital. Starbucks has this digital flywheel. If you look at the Fortune 500, 70% are new, and they're going to over the last 20 years. So the Fortune 500 switched so fast, it's going to continue. Right now, we're looking at Toys R Us. It's probably going to go bankrupt this year. Sad, right? I mean,
is that because of Amazon's eating their lunch, or?
Perhaps. I think it is a lot to do that. I mean, it's just everything's eating their lunch. Look, they're competing on a multifaceted war now. They have locations that cost money. You have to fight online, and you have to really lean into the digital piece, because that frontier is larger.
And what is the digital flywheel that you mentioned? What does that? for Starbucks?
Yeah. So Starbucks is what's called the digital flywheel. It's their whole philosophy around everything from the way that they do the payment when you walk in using your iPhone, the way they collect data. There's all these components that are making the consumer's job easier, whether you buy a gift card, how you use the internet. All of this stuff is how they're putting together this concept called the digital flywheel to seamlessly make the experience both intelligent and better for the consumer.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
That's a philosophy that comes from the internet more than anything else. Ironically, the CTO that started the digital flywheel came from the wine industry.
Oh, really?
So,
Okay.
yeah, Steve was with wineshopperwine.com way back when.
Okay.
So, yeah, he
Awesome.
was now. I think he's the CTO of Semantic or something now. But really interesting that he came from that piece.
Yeah, really. And so what do you think about live video or video in general for the wine industry versus text and other ways of sharing and connecting?
Well, I mean, we all know that video is becoming much more consumable. Images are much more consumable than text. I think that the cost to produce video is, while it's cheap to do it really nicely, or to at least, if you do it cheap, to make it feel like there's a reason you're doing cheap and you're being thoughtful about it. It's content creation, again, which is the most expensive and hardest part about wineries and where they have the most trouble. It's also the most fun, so that's why a lot of wineries actually lean into the content part of the business of social media. They're creating new ads and new whatever versus engaging with consumers, because that's the really boring drudgery work to some degree, and some people think. A marketer likes to make big, pretty pictures or big, pretty videos, or, talking to people one-on-one, or doing data analytics on why these people think this way so they can think like them. It's not as fun, right? So,
Right. What's the feature you'd like to see be added to your favorite wine app, Paul?
That's an interesting one. That's a good question. So the purchasing of wine is still a problem. There's no real good purchaser to buy the wines from, or to put it in a save list, or to share that wine specifically with, hey guys, this is the wine, almost like a playlist.
Yes.
This is my
Spotify,
playlist. I drank all my Spotify playlist. This is for you that love to follow my feed. Here are the white wines I'm going to put in my recommended flow.
Yeah.
That way you don't have to sort through 400 wines to find the ones I like. So maybe like a playlist would be
a playlist that you could actually consume, because as you pointed out, the long tail searches are music, books, and films and wine, but wine is the only one that can't be delivered digitally.
That's exactly right. I like that notion of a playlist. It saves time, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Customers recommended this, also recommended that. Or, who do you follow and who do you really like of their taste? Like, I really enjoy Elaine Brown's palette. Do you know Elaine Brown? Hawk Waka Waka.
No. Oh, I've heard of her. Yeah.
Oh man, you have to meet her as well.
Oh,
she's amazing.
yeah.
So she has a great palette, and I enjoy her wines. They're a little more esoteric, but she's really deep and really ritualistic about understanding them. And
Sounds good. I've got a lot of homework after this. So do you think PR is dead? Like, I still get press releases announcing the new vice president of such and such, and there's like no wine to taste or anything. I mean, what's the role of PR agencies?
So PR, it's really interesting. So PR was a dying industry around, let's say, 2007, 2008. It was like really relegated to the place of event coordination and press releases.
Okay.
Right. That was kind of the thing. And obviously influencer, like yourself, outreach, right? So that was the kind of thing. But then along came social media, and it brought PR back to exactly what it was about, which is public relations, right? So social media was this broad thing. And actually more PR companies have gravitated to social media management, social media, and they've learned a whole new discipline around PR. And then social media and marketing, then that became the fight. So you're seeing a lot of social media, or a lot of PR agencies and marketing agencies first turn digital, second focus on social media, or first focus on second social media, then do digital, and then match together. So the amount of marketing communication companies that are becoming, we do PR and we do marketing, including creative, et cetera, is growing rapidly. I mean, they're just collapsing together faster and faster. So I think the role of PR is changed dimensionally. I think that it's gone back to its original roots, which is how to make the public feel about your product, not just influencers, not just newspaper writers, not just events, but everyone. How you make everybody feel good about it, or know about it, or understand your story. And that's similar to marketing. So they're, like I said, they're mashing together pretty strongly.
Wow. That's cool.
So, yeah, it is actually cool. It's a cool time to be in marketing communications. It's a very hard discipline. I mean, the amount you have to know as a marketing professional is everything from analytics to, creative. And then you start to slice about the different disciplines, whether it's print or broadcast or digital. And then when you go to digital, you have like, I don't know, 100 variations. So many specialties are turning up.
And then just knowing the industry itself, which is
That's another kookiness. Yeah, endlessly complex and endlessly silly.
That is amazing.
It's a jigsaw puzzle.
So Paul, is there anything that we have not covered that you'd really like to mention right now? Yeah.
I think that 2018 is going to be a tough year for the wine industry.
Why is that?
Well, Rob McMillan from Silicon Valley Bank is already telegraphing, early indicators of the softness of the market.
Okay.
As you can see, it's really impacted. There's a lot of wholesaler consolidation in the United States. There's a lot of acquisitions going on, bigger wineries getting bigger. There's so many challenges hitting us at the same time. The consolidation challenges that were going before hitting, and it's even hitting on the direct consumer, the winery direct shipment side. I mean, I think Napa Valley has 700 wineries.
Oh, wow.
Right?
And it's such a small region.
And even though we're overly fortunate that we have like anywhere, depending on the stats, 2.9 to 4.9 million people coming through the valley every year, this is the first year that I've heard both in Napa and Sonoma that during the tourist season, it's not as strong as it was the last year, even though the same amount of people are coming through. And it's because it's diffused now. There's more wineries spreading them. Well, I mean,
right. A lot of competition.
And how do you compete? If you have a weekend, right? You're going to Napa, you can visit 4 to 6 wineries without just getting blasted.
Sure. But there's 700 to choose from.
But there's 700 to choose from, right?
And then Sonoma is right on your doorstep.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, man, you can jump over the hill the same day or the vice versa. And I mean, they have like 300-400 or something like that. It's amazing.
So again, service differentiates. You've got to have that relationship perhaps before they come to visit Napa, like you've been online connecting with them.
When they're there, making sure that they feel, that connection, not like a meat grinder trying to get people through the doors,
Right.
Which
people can sense that. And especially in this hospitality industry, whether you're talking to them or at them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For sure. And I think that that's something that we are all going to experience pretty heavy duty in 2018. And then the concern of like companies like Amazon, we're getting, international competition like nobody's business. There's so many factors playing at us this year.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see. Even those cheap wine clubs that are coming out, right? Whether it's Club W or from Wink, or there's the one that's Naked Wines, you're competing against these virtual brands that don't actually really exist. So now you're competing against wines. It's hard. It's getting harder and harder.
Absolutely. Wow. So we're going to have to talk again in, a month from now, a year from now, see what's changed. I'm sure
let's do it.
Lots will change. And
let's put the date on the calendar right now.
We will. Absolutely. No, great. Paul, this would be great. I know lots of people will be interested in this. So Paul, where can people best reach you online?
I'm most accessible on Twitter at P Mabray, P-M-A-B-R-A-Y. So I'm easy to find. Paul Mabray. I'm the only guy that has that name. I'm very lucky that way. No Joe Smith or anything like that. So, congrats to all the Joe Smiths but I mean, it's a pretty unique name. So
it's a unicorn.
Exactly. On Twitter, it's easy to find me. I answer every tweet. I answer every DM.
Twitter is good.
Constrained to 140 characters.
That's true. Right? 280 soon. Anyway. It's a good gating factor.
I've seen the 280 tweets, by the way. They look very long, by the way. Have you seen any yet?
No, I haven't seen them yet, but that's very long.
I'd rather have them do the tweet stream. They had a feature that they were allowing people to put it into
a conversation. They have
a threaded one that they're going to add. And I thought that was more interesting than the 280.
For sure. I don't think that's going to fix Twitter's problems, but I still love Twitter.
I love Twitter.
Like a hopelessly bad boyfriend. But anyway.
I am right there with you. It's a tough one, right?
Yeah, it really is.
You love it. And I love it and I hate it and I love it and I hate it and I love it and I hate it. It's just,
Yes. Paul, this was so great.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's so excellent. The insights and we have material here for 3 hours, but I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for your time and for your generosity and sharing your intelligence.
Lunch soon. I'll come to Canada or you come back to Napa and we'll have lunch.
Absolutely. Wouldn't that be fun? Really?
It would be.
I still think fondly on that. So I will say goodnight for now, and you can go back to your 4 lovely children and beautiful wife, but this will live on in history.
Have a wonderful night.
Okay, take care, Paul. Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this chat with Paul Mabray. Here are my takeaways. Number 1,
Paul is so memorably pithy. Quote, all customers are important, but some customers are more important than others. End quote. Number 2, his insight is spot on about bundling service with products, and that products are becoming services, especially with monthly subscriptions like Dollar Shave Club or Rent the Runway. That's a model, he says, that wineries invented, but many haven't innovated on that concept since. Number 3, he points out how relevant the Dunbar rule is for wineries on social media, where it is possible to scale deeper engagement. I like his concept of thin and thick connections. And number 4, he has great insight into how the roles of wine critics and PR managers are changing. On a side note, he mentions that he wishes he had the ability to share a playlist of his favorite wines the way you can with songs in Spotify. Well, there's an app for that. My Wine app for iPhone, iPad, and Android devices allows you to share your favorite wines, in list form if you wish, as well as to scan barcodes and front labels to instantly access my wine scores and food pairings. You can search for it using my name, or I'll put a link to it in the show notes at nataliemaclean.com/65, along with links to Paul's website, social media handles, the video version of this conversation, and how you can join me on Facebook Live video every second Wednesday at 7 p.m. If you like this episode, please tell a friend about it, especially one who's interested in the fascinating wine insights Paul shared. Finally, if you want your wine future to be mouth-wateringly delicious, join me in a free online video class at nataliemaclean.com/class. You won't want to miss next week when we'll be chatting with Clark Smith, a winemaker, consultant, author, inventor, musician, professor, and provocateur to the wine industry around the planet. Clark has some stimulating and controversial ideas to change the way you think about the wines you drink. Thank you for taking the time to join me here. I hope something great is in your glass this week. Perhaps a wine that you can see drinking again in the near future.
You don't want to miss one juicy episode of this podcast, especially the secret, full-bodied bonus episodes that I don't announce on social media. So, subscribe for free now at nataliemaclean.com/subscribe. Meet me here next week. Cheers.